So I'm sort of just used to making records with at least starting off with like unadulterated live performance as being the basis for everything, for the kind of music that I like to do, and just like the aesthetic I like to have. It's like that sort of like unadulterated performance, like the real capturing of like a moment that happened between people in a room. You just can't replace that.
Welcome to episode 87 of the Bass Shed podcast. My name is Ryan Roberts. To all my bass player friends that are teaching from home and managing a private lessons studio, Blink Lesson is an incredibly thorough resource to manage every aspect of private and group instruction. Blink Lesson offers an extended trial period to listeners of the Bass Shed podcast. So stop by thebasshed.com, click on the logo for Blink Lesson, and begin your free 30-day trial period of an amazing resource for all private instruction. Blinklesson.app. Singers, songwriters, musicians, creators, check out Fine.com. Fine.com is a music distribution platform created by musicians for musicians and integrates blockchain and NFT technologies. All right. I didn't know a lot about these technologies, so I sat down with the owners of Fine.com for episode 76 of the Bass Shed podcast. You can learn more about the company straight from the owners themselves on episode 76. Fine.com is free to sign up and free to upload your creative work. Fine.com. On September 3rd, Lemur Music is presenting the first Bass Benefits by the Beach from 4 to 8 p.m. This is going to be held at Lemur Music in San Clemente, California. It's an afternoon of live music, art from art galleries, and local artists from the community coming together to raise money that will go to organizations that support those with special needs and music education. It's a great cause. I'm proud to be a part of it. You can go by lemurmusic.com or at Lemur Music on Instagram to learn more. It's going to be a hang.
Count me in.
All right, my guest, Nick Campbell, is a touring and session bassist. He is also a producer, writer, leader, co-leader, etc., etc. As a sideman, Nick has worked with Pomplamoose, Scary Pockets, Charlie Puth, Vulfpeck, Meghan Trainor, Raquel Rodriguez, Nigel Hall, Josh Smith, Kirk Fletcher, Lunchmoney Lewis, Michael Mayo, and Moonchild. As a leader and co-leader, Nick has a couple projects titled Shrek is Love and Bear Attack. Nick will talk about those projects. You can visit his website, Campbell Destroys, for more information, and also check him out on Instagram at Nick Campbell Destroys. I will have links up to both of those, as well as Nick's Spotify page at thebasshed.com/podcast/Nick Campbell Destroys. Not only is Nick Campbell a crushing bass player with an affinity for vintage gear and unique sounding basses that of course, we're going to talk about, he's also really knowledgeable about the economics of the music industry. This I find really fascinating, and it was a great time hearing Nick speak. In such an informed way about the economics of the music industry that affect us all. It was killing. It was absolutely killing. And here it is. Here's my talk with bassist Nick Campbell.
Hey man, how's it going?
Doing all right. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Can't complain.
Cool. What are you up to today?
Today is actually a little mellow, so I'm just doing like housekeeping, errand type stuff.
Yeah.
This month is actually like a little slow for me, which is really nice because the rest of the year has been like kind of crazy, so I'm sort of enjoying a little bit of downtime.
The rest of the year that's left, or so far up till now?
So far up until now.
Okay. What have you been doing?
A lot of traveling and sessions, and I have a bunch of music I've been working on. So I have like 2 albums done, and I just put out the first single from one of them on my birthday a couple weeks ago. And so there's just been a lot going on, which is great. The last few years have been very strange, and there hasn't been that much going on. So.
Right. There's worse problems to have than being too busy creating art.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I've seen online. We have a bunch of mutual friends. I know that.
Yeah.
But you have a ridiculous band. Sean Horton on drums, Jacob Luttrell who's one of my all-time favorite just singers and entertainers. Like, he's such a badass.
Yeah, so the record that I'm about to put out is like, there's different singers on every track. So the tune that we just put out, so we did a little like single release birthday party show. Jacob has like a weekly gig at Black Rabbit Rose, so we did it there. And it was that night, it was me, Jacob, Sean, Lincoln Cleary, and Horace Gray were the main band.
Okay.
But so Jacob and I did a tune for my record, and then some of the other guys who are on it, like like Antoine and Theo from Vulf, are both on a couple songs. Nigel Hall's on a tune. Raquel Rodriguez is on one. Michael Mayo is on a bunch of stuff. It's just like a bunch of my friends.
Yeah. So how did that session work then? Did you just block out a couple days and it was this revolving door of artists coming in, or were you booking like a session a week with the personnel for that tune?
Yeah. So what ended up happening is I did all the basic tracking for everything at the very, very end of 2019.
Okay.
And so I had all the rhythm section stuff done. And as I was starting to work around people's schedules to kind of like, I would, because people are always in and out of town. So I would try to like see when certain friends would be around and be like, all right, cool, let's do this tune real quick.
Right.
And right as I was about halfway through doing all of that, COVID hit. So
then everybody's available. Yeah. And you can do it all in 2 days.
Yeah. So I kind of had to do the last half of it remote.
Okay.
It's interesting because most of the record is like, I don't really do a lot of editing or anything. I like to kind of keep things pretty like the way they are.
Yeah.
So like all the rhythm section takes are all totally live.
Okay.
And I overdubbed some stuff on top of it. But it was a trip having to switch from like an environment that was going to be like live plus was sort of going to be the sound of the record, where you record live and then have overdub on top of that.
Right.
To kind of being like, oh man, like I have to like, doing things remote takes a lot longer.
A little bit more tedious. What were some records that were like inspirational to that production approach?
That's a good question. I mean, I think like that's always how I've made stuff. Like I play a lot like with like Pomplamoose and Scary Pockets and all that stuff's live, and so I'm sort of just used to making records with at least starting off with like a unadulterated live performance is
right.
The basis for everything.
Yeah.
And not that sampled music like isn't cool, because some of my favorite records are not made that way, but for the kind of music that I like to do, and just like the aesthetic I like to have, it's like that sort of like unadulterated performance, like the real capturing of like a moment that happened between people in a room. You just can't replace it.
No, that's special. I mean, when it comes to records like that, they're very similar to like just like a Polaroid picture. This happened that day, that time, because of how everybody was feeling that day, and whatever drama was going on in everybody's independent life is now a part of it. If someone just blew a flat tire the day before, or
exactly
has to go pick up their dry cleaning and they're stressing out about what time the cleaner closes, like that's all part of it. And I think there's something special to that.
And I think there's something about like the way, like I have a lot of friends who like produce pop records and stuff like that, and like I don't think that kind of like let's give like the audience like a view into a moment that is only going to happen this one time, and we're just lucky the mics were on,
Yeah.
That's not really part of the process anymore. And all of my favorite records, like, or not all of them, but most of them were made that way, like it's, when I like listen to like Motown records or anything from the 60s and 70s, it's like a lot of it up until really like computers became really, capable of recording stuff in people's houses and stuff like that. Everything sort of was like live plus. It was like you had to start with a snapshot in time of just like this moment of performance that is, I think, absent from a lot of modern recordings, which is something that I really miss. And it's sort of something that, like, especially growing up, like playing a lot of jazz music and stuff like that, that's like such a big part of the way I like to express myself musically, and part of the stuff that I value, that it's like everything I do is like that.
And it's a different skill set, I feel like, from each individual performer, because you have to be aware, you have to like not nail it to one time, but you have to be very conscious about your musical input, in real time.
Yeah, totally.
Because it's just like, okay, I can't screw up this take.
Yeah.
Like we gotta kind of protect this. Whereas like if if everything's laid down and you're just doing like bass overdubs or something, you can maybe get a little rambunctious, and be like, all right, punch it again. There's a disposable nature to it.
Yeah.
When you're just multi-tracking, and you have to be a little bit more concerned and diligent and kind of focused on the greater good the whole time.
Like fully in the moment and like full servant of the music in a way that like you can get away with not doing if you don't do it that way.
Yeah.
And it's for me, for whatever reason, I feel like I play best that way. I don't know. I just like there's something about that vibe that I just thrive in. Like the second record I did is more of like a jazz thing. I did it with Christian Human and Jacob Mann. We did like a live trio record called Live for the Highest Bidder. We filmed like a live concert film.
Okay.
For one person and sold the ticket on eBay and filmed it all and like did a lot of stuff to the dude who was really cool. But it's sort of like it's not quite as out there as an Eric Andre show episode, but it's like not that far away from that.
Okay.
And that record like is all like all the music's pretty much through composed. So the way we did it is like there are 3 chunks where you can kind of stop. So we just ran the show 3 times with no click or anything, and that's
okay. That's it.
You just pick the best one, and that's what it is.
The best full take.
Yeah, I mean, like you couldn't really. There's 3 spots where you could kind of like be like, oh, but I think we ended up using everything from the same rundown of the show. I think we just liked the third one the best. But there was like each take was like 4 songs or 3 songs or whatever. So it's like if we had liked the middle one from performance show run 2,
okay,
could have done that. But in the 4 songs that are in each take, there's no way to edit between any of them or anything.
Oh man, was that something you guys wrote as a trio?
Jacob and I wrote most of the music together.
Okay.
Some of it's just my tunes, some of it's just Jacob's tunes, but a lot of it we kind of wrote together. And Jacob and I kind of came up with the idea for it.
Okay.
Christian, Jacob, and I wrote one tune for it together at the end. But we also have this band with Michael Mayo called Shrek is Love, which is sort of like a troll band about the Shrek movie. And we've just been playing together for years. So, and Jacob is sort of like Jacob Mann's on my record also. The one that I just did myself, and we've known each other for like 12 years. So like we've just been kind of doing stuff like, oh, it would be really funny, and he's like my buddy who's like,
yeah, just like, yeah, I'm in. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Now I've never seen the movie Shrek. Why Shrek?
It started with an internet meme called Shrek is Love, Shrek is Life. And I remember the first time I met Michael and Christian when they were at the Monk Institute. We got together and played some tunes, and we were like, oh, man, we should do a Blue Whale show together or sometime.
Yeah.
And I showed them this YouTube video, which is incredibly disturbing, called Shrek is Love, Shrek is Life. And I remember it really vividly. We were at In-N-Out in Westwood, and I was like, oh, yeah, by the way, I know we just met, but do you want to see this YouTube video I like? Yeah. And they were super into it. And
what's the premise of this video? Is it like pretty dark?
It's super dark. I don't want to say anything. I feel like you should just go watch it.
Okay.
We booked a gig at the Whale, and we were like, oh, haha, we're going to call the band Shrek is Love. That's funny. Yeah. And then like 5 days before the gig, we were like, guys, we don't have any song. Like, what do you want to play? Like, we have a
gig Saturday. Yeah, we don't know what the hell we're doing.
We had to play like 2 sets. Like, what do you guys want to do? And so we wrote all the music for our first EP and then arranged a bunch of stuff like really fast.
Okay.
And it's funny. That band kind of has like this weird sort of cult following.
Really?
In jazz school circles. I've been on tour a lot where like I'll be in Europe or be at like a jazz festival or something, and I'll have like a kid come up to me and be like, dude, I love Shrek is Love. And every time it happens, it really makes me happy because it's, it's a great band because the players are all ridiculous, but we're just like kind of fucking around,
Right, but then it built this thing.
There's a crew of people who seem to really like it.
What's the vibe? Like you mentioned, it was jazz, but like what within the world of jazz?
It's like more on the like R&B soul side of jazz.
Okay.
Is
it kind of But I mean, you have these like long sections and stuff. Is it kind of Medeski, Martin, and Wood kind of jam bandy?
I wouldn't say it's jam bandy. There's like a little too much modern harmony for it to be jam bandy. It kind of is more in sort of like me and Jacob went to college with all the Moonchild people, and so we were all into the same kind of stuff at that time. Like we listened to a lot of D'Angelo and Badu and like,
all that neo soul stuff. Yeah,
so it's like kind of in that world, but with like a little bit more of the kind of like stuff you'd hear at Smalls, sort of like harmony wise,
right?
Just a little more,
yeah.
And like hits.
But I feel like that music was cool for the time because of its introduction of more jazz vocabulary into the R&B thing. I loved all that stuff.
Me too. I still do. I mean, I was just at North Sea Jazz Festival with Michael. Michael has a record I played on called Bones Out that's amazing, and we played at North Sea this year, and we all went to go. I had a bunch of friends there, and I have a lot of friends in Jacob Collier's band, and we all went to go Badu together, and it was like,
dope.
It was amazing. It was
Has she done anything new recently? Like the last I heard from Badu was this track, maybe like it was a long time ago, that she did with Janelle Monáe.
Oh, I haven't heard that.
And somebody else. There was three women singing on it, and like I was a huge Janelle fan from Tightrope. Like I loved Tightrope, loved it. Yeah. And then I've been a Badu fan since, the first record.
Yeah.
I still think the live record's the best.
That's a really good one.
Yeah.
I always was really into Mama's Gun. That's probably my favorite.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I'm not really sure. I remember seeing that she was on the bill one of the days we were going to be there.
Okay.
And we were all just like, well, we have to go see this.
Yeah, check it out. Do you know anybody in her band?
I don't know.
No.
But they sounded awesome, and it was cool too.
No doubt.
A lot of the times when you see people play like live shows, they'll have live arrangements that are really cool, and everything is like really kind of over the top, and be like that. It seems like the band wants to make sure the audience hears all their new hits and stuff. And the way Badu's band did it, it was like all very understated.
Oh.
In a way that was like very inspiring to see. Like there were these sort of through composed things that would only happen like once or twice, but nobody made like a particularly big deal out of it. Like if you weren't really listening closely, like you might not really notice.
Oh, really?
Which was a really cool thing to see.
And so you're talking about how the musicians were performing during the set, or the arc of the set itself?
That and the arrangements. Like a lot of the time, like in pop world or hip hop world, people will make like live arrangements for their stuff that are like really intense and aggressive, and like there's lots of hits and fills, and they're really big and overstated.
It's more theatrical,
exciting, Sure. And it was cool to kind of see her flip that concept where there was the same level of detail, but nothing was really like overstated in any way.
Right,
it was
like
really cool.
The anti-church approach.
It was pretty like it made me think about it. It's like, man, this must have taken a long time to put together, because there's like a lot of stuff going on. But if you're just hanging out listening to the show, you probably never notice. It doesn't distract from the vocal or anything. It was like really inspiring to see in terms of just like cool ways to put a show together.
So you got 2 records. Just released the single. What's the single called?
Fancy Jeans. So that's the one I did with Jacob. Yeah, it's out on all the streaming stuff, and then I'll probably put a song out every 6 weeks or so.
Okay.
And then put my first record out in the middle of the year, and then do the live one probably next year sometime.
So the full record will be... Now, these singles that you're doing are all from the same record, or are you pulling from different records?
No, these ones right now are all from the same record. So my record's called Art. So it's Campbell Destroys Art. And and that's what I'm focusing on putting out right now. And then the second one, we're pretty much done with the video side of it. So we're going to release it as a concert film.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Where'd you shoot it? And what is it? Is it like a music video, or is it like a lot of live footage?
No, it's all live. It's just like the live film that we did when we recorded the thing with the audience member.
Oh, that's cool.
And
okay. That's cool.
And all the trolling we did to him.
Which went how far? Which like how deep was that?
There's nothing like destructive, but
Okay.
we like would do stuff like I don't want to give too much of it away, but there's like one part that I really liked where you know how sometimes like when we had our friend be an announcer for it.
Okay.
And he was like, "Oh man, like you're having a good time. Like who do you think who's your favorite person in the band? Like who do you really vibe with?" Which is sort of like a innocuous question, but if you think about it, it's like kind of weird to ask someone. But people do stuff like that all the time. And he was like, "Oh, this person," and he was like, "Oh, okay, cool. So like now, who do you think is like the worst person in the band?" We kind of like instructed him to like not let anything move on until he like answered the question. And then we got like I bought like these poop emoji hats to be like a dunce hat, and so whoever lost had to wear it for the rest of the recording. And there's like stuff like that.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
It turned out really good. It's really funny.
So are you releasing video footage with the singles? Or is that all part of the master digital release once the whole record?
For the second one, that's just gonna, I think, probably all come out as just like a single film.
Okay.
For my stuff, Fancy Jeans, there's a live version on the Pomplamoose YouTube channel that we did. And then we're making a music video for that now. And then I'm working on one music video for the tune I did with Theo. And then I have one done for the one I did with Nigel, which will be the third.
Okay. That's a big undertaking, man, to take on the video component too.
It's a lot of work, man. I'm glad that, like, just from, being in music for so long, I have friends that like I know and trust. But yeah, I mean, a big part of like being able to do this was like I did a lot of like session swapping with friends.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Really, it's great. Yeah. And it's one of those things that, you can only do like after, more than a decade of just like making friends in the music industry.
Yeah.
And I think there's like a particularly fertile scene kind of in LA right now of people making really interesting stuff.
I think so.
People who can just like play their asses off.
Yeah. I mean, when everything opened up, there was that was inspiring. It's like, oh yay, we're back. We don't have to still be depressed, wondering if our occupation is ever going to return. Like, okay, cool. Let's do it.
Yeah, and I'm glad that like it seemed like there's some people that left, but a lot of people stayed. So it still seems like that kind of creative energy that was here before the pandemic is still here.
Yeah. I know of a few people that left.
Me too.
But it's good. The people that stayed, they're gonna, they were strong figures on the scene, and so that's cool. I think the local scene has become quite curious. Like, I think the local scene is still trying to figure it out. Like, some new clubs open, some shut down, some that will always be around are still around.
Yeah.
Everybody's just trying to see where the dust settles.
Yeah, most of my favorite ones are gone, unfortunately.
Yeah, besides the whale.
the whale and the bootleg. I mean, I know the bootleg kind of came back. I haven't been there since they reopened under a new name, but so I'd be curious to check it out. But yeah, those two places were the places I tended to play.
Yeah. Yeah, it was sad. It was sad to hear about the whale. That was
yeah,
that sucked.
My girlfriend and I we were just like so depressed when we and I remember, I'll never forget, it was like New Year's Eve right before 2021.
Oh, is that when it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we kind of had heard it was going to happen before, and
I had heard some things about that were kind of unrelated to COVID. I had heard just chatter on the scene about stuff, and I'm like, oh man, hope it doesn't happen, because that place was such a creative force for the city.
Yeah, I feel like I really honed like my whole like creative aesthetic there. I spent so much time there, and like June was so cool about like giving people a place to really like not just hone their craft, but like figure out what they wanted to say as artists. Yeah, in a way that just like there isn't another place in LA that's really like that. There's some great clubs here, but it's not. There's nothing like that.
Yeah, that's he was art first, which I thought was so beautiful, and it wasn't about like the cover and make sure you buy 2 drinks, and how many people is your band gonna pull. Like he was he was always interested in the art, which was really inspiring.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I feel lucky that like we got to like experience that for as long as we did here.
Yeah, yeah. Shifting gears into basses.
Let's do
basses.
It.
You are way more of a vintage guy than I am.
Yeah, very much.
That's your thing. That's your thing. Your bass sounds always seem to have some big toe hair on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's always like a strong layer of grit. At what point in your playing in career did that become kind of your sound?
I think like it kind of came through like, well, the first thing that really happened, I think, is like I got like a 60s P bass, and
sick,
like a really good one from 65, and back before they were like $20,000, I got mine for like $3,000.
Okay.
And it was like, there's just something about how those instruments, when you put them through like a tube amplifier of some kind, like I always record with the Noble DIs, and there's just something about it that like it just always sits in the mix. Like I have a bunch of basses that are all great, and I'd say 90% of the time I show up to a session and I'll be like, oh, maybe I'll try this one thing on this song and see how it goes. And then I play my P bass instead. I'm just like, I guess I'm just going to use this again.
Yeah, yeah.
It always just sits perfectly like where you want it to.
Okay.
Like, frequency response has like just as much low end as you want, and it's really clear, but not in a way that's harsh. And to me, that's kind of like, it's just all about it, how that stuff sits in the mix over time. Because like, when I was younger, I was like all about like fusion jazz bass. I was like, I think that stuff is cool, but to me, at least when I do it, I feel like it sounds better when I'm alone. And when I'm playing with a band, it's like I don't think this like is as cool, you know?
Well, like the super hi-fi bass sound, like the $9 million Federa sound.
I just like can't make that stuff sound good. I mean, maybe I just need to like play one that like, I mean, and part of it too, it's just like depending on the kind of music you're playing, like certain things are gonna sound more appropriate, and the stuff that I tend to do is kind of like more associated with like kind of more old school sounds, and that's the way it's built. That's the way the aesthetic is crafted. So it's just like playing a Federa on something like that is like super inappropriate, you know?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, a 60s P bass is always going to be good.
Dude, also, I mean, I feel like I've been like kind of, you know, in the periphery of bass shopping pretty gnarly. I don't know why I think I need to spend money I don't have on another bass, but this happens kind of regularly. And so I've been like just shopping around, looking at all kinds of basses. There's something about, you know, if I were to get like just an old P, like I'm going to play differently on the old P than I would if I bought like a PJ from the same make, you know, or if I bought just the J, or if I bought something with active electronics. And then there's a look to it. Like if it was Relic, I'd play different than if it was this super pristine, you know, $4,000 F bass or something that was totally. Like I would play different on all of that.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about that. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah, no, that's a big thing. I mean, you know, my two main axes are my 60s P, and then I have this like modded Music Master bass that I did with a friend, and I
still want to know what pickups are in it.
I will tell you.
Oh, really? Is this an exclusive? Oh, okay.
Not when we're not recording.
All right. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, it's only a secret just because like people won't leave me alone on the internet about
it. No, but it's kind of amazing. It's kind of amazing. Like you're creating this buzz.
Once it became a thing, it's just like I mean, it's really cool sounding.
It's more fun to have the thing than it is to like, you know, just tell everybody how you modded the bass.
Yeah, and it's I don't know. Anyway, but and I definitely play really different on both of those. But there's something about the vintage stuff too that like when I play the like. Maybe I just haven't found one I really connect with, but when I play the like super fast boutique active fusion style stuff, I kind of like, I think it's like too fast. You know, I feel like I play more from my fingers a lot than like I try to like sing everything I play when I play and like improvise, and I feel like that little tiny bit of resistance you get from a really good vintage bass, it's just slight enough that it forces you to like actually process what you're really hearing from your ears instead of just from your hands. And I've definitely had some nights where like I've been a little drunk and sat in on some friends. They have those kinds of basses, and it's like I've heard recordings from it, and it's just like shred city, and I'm just like, this is too much. This is like how I want to sound. You know,
I've sat in on I'll tell those names off mic, but people we both know, I've sat in on their basses before at nights. And it's like it was too fast.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like it was the equivalent of like I'm used to driving a RAV4 and all of a sudden I'm in a Tesla. And it's like, whoa, I don't even know how to manage this right now.
Yeah,
I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I just don't like, you know, and it's funny because I have a lot of friends who play that kind of stuff and like they sound beautiful on that stuff.
Yeah.
I think I sound fine on it. I just don't, it just doesn't like pull out inspiration for me in that way. Mm-hmm. But I'm totally... Again, this is like if I were doing a kind of gig that needed that sort of thing, or if I found like a particular bass that like, I'm actually kind of looking for like a 5-string active bass that I really like.
Oh yeah?
Just for in the instances I need that kind of sound, which is very rare, but it does happen occasionally.
What's on the chopping block? Which ones are you looking at?
I don't know, man. I mean, I've played some F basses that I think are cool. Mm-hmm. I've never played a Federo before. Mm-hmm. They seem cool. I like the ones that are more vintage looking. I don't know. I've heard Lakeland make some really good stuff that isn't too fast, but gives you that thing.
Yeah, my 5-fretted is a Lakeland that I've had forever. And then me and Dan Lakin from Lakeland, we become good friends, and
cool.
We built my signature model, which is a 5-fretless.
Oh, cool.
I like the Lakeland neck. I like the Lakeland neck a lot. It's like I like that bass because it's kind of a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. So I've never played one of their active ones, so I feel like I might start with that.
Okay. Yeah, they're pretty cool. I'm about to just mod the shit out of it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, like was talking like the whole bit, like have it refinished. I was talking to some refinishing guy last week, and he's telling me like a furniture guy to send it to get it stripped and then mail him the body. Yeah, that's
awesome.
Yeah, and I'm like, dude, man, I can do it. Like my dad's got a shop. I'll just take it over to my dad's place. He's like, dude, don't take a belt sander to it. I'm like, oh, all right, because that's exactly what I was gonna do.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So, but yeah, there's just something, and also like in college, I got like really into like Pino and Tim LaFave and all those dudes, and it's like that they kind of got me into that. I just like loved the tone of it's warm but clear.
Yeah.
And it focused in this really particular way. And just a lot of new P basses don't have that. Some do, but they're really hard. Like when you play a really good old one, it's just like a totally different.
I think, there's something about the old P bass that has that grit to it that I feel like new P basses are trying to sound like a boutique-y active bass.
Yeah.
But still like under the guise of being a P bass, and it loses both qualities. It's not the boutique thing, and it's not even like the P sound that is the industry standard P bass sound.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of, it's got P bass pickups, but like you're a little bit of a poser.
Yeah, like I don't know, when I play like new ones, with some exceptions, like I just had a Linto made a copy of my 65.
Okay.
About them, they're Labella's company, and it is really good. I had to make a copy of it for touring.
Okay.
And it's probably about as close as you're gonna get to like playing a new old bass.
What are the pickups in that then?
It's just a P bass.
Really?
It's just really good.
Okay. So they copied like your neck shape, the weight, the body wood.
It's not an exact copy, but it's really close. They kind of have their own thing that they do, and I went to their shop in Brooklyn one of the last times I was there, and I played some of their stuff because I was curious about it.
Yeah.
It just like when I was playing it felt like I was playing like a real one.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, I got to get one of these for touring because I won't travel with my real one.
The 65. What do you think? What do you think the 65 would be appraised for now?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'd
say like off just no idea. I don't really know about that world. I'd say probably at least 8.
I'd say that's probably about right now. Yeah. because it has a clear coat refin, so the original custom color finish is underneath.
Okay.
But it's technically a refin, but it's not like it's a pretty minimal one, and the original finish is underneath it. So I'd say, yeah, it's probably about right.
Okay.
That sounds about right to me.
When writing tunes for your records, where do you get your inspiration from? Is it other music? Is it other art? You know, like I'm thinking about that specifically because like you named a whole band reacting to an internet video.
Yeah, a lot of it I think is from a few places. It's from just like the immediate musical community that's here. Like a lot of my favorite stuff that's being made right now is like being made by friends, which is cool. So I feel like everyone's kind of bouncing musical ideas back off each other in the sort of community that I'm in right now.
Yeah,
and that's a big one. And oftentimes, like I don't sing, so when I write songs, I have to write them for friends of mine that I have in mind to sing.
Oh, so you do the lyrics then?
Yeah, most of them.
Okay, that's a whole
some of them
other
are
thing,
co-writes, but yeah. And so I like wrote all the music, and I either wrote or co-wrote all the musical lyrics, and then produced and arranged everything.
Okay.
So and there's something about like Michael Mayo is a great example. Do you know Mike's stuff? Have you ever heard him sing before?
I know the name definitely, but
he's a freak, man.
Maybe like back in the day, like when Iyaji and I started that jam at the Fed.
Yeah.
Like I used to meet so many people.
Yeah.
And or they sit in or something, or I don't know. Those years were a little bit of a blur.
Yeah, he's
I met a lot of people. I've heard a lot of people, but I can't always associate him.
He lives in New York now, but he's one of my best friends, and a lot of the music I've written, he's sang, and he's like Mark Turner, but a vocalist. It's insane.
Oh, damn.
Saying anything. Like,
okay.
He plays with Ben Wendell all the time, and he's played with Herbie, and
okay. But he's a vocalist.
He's a vocalist, yeah.
Okay.
He's a freak of nature.
Was he out here?
He was, yeah.
Okay.
How we met. But, I mean, like, I've seen him do, like, 30-part backgrounds in 25 minutes. It's like insane stuff. I tried auto-tuning him once, and it didn't do anything. It's like that kind of stuff. And so, like, if I'm...
Does he have perfect pitch?
No, that's the crazy
really
thing about it. Yeah, he doesn't.
Damn.
He has really good relative pitch.
Wow.
Yeah. He's just insane.
Okay.
But when I'm like writing music for him, like I can imagine, I know him well enough that like it inspires me to write at least the music and sometimes the lyrics in a different way because I know that person's probably going to sing it. And then like for the tune I wrote with Jacob, I had written all the music, and Jacob and I met on a Scary Pockets tour, and so we started playing a lot together after that.
Okay.
Working on it. And I wrote this pre-chorus that kind of had this like Stevie Wonder 2/5 sus chord thing that Jacob likes in a lot of his tunes. And I was like, oh, I have a feeling that Jacob would like this. Like we should finish this together. Okay. And so it's like that is a big part of it for me is like having an idea of like the people who are probably going to play on it.
Right.
Really changes the way I write and arrange.
Yeah, I feel like it can help give some direction.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And then a lot of it too is like I read a lot, and so a lot of the stuff that I write about tends to come from something I've been reading.
Well, fiction or nonfiction?
Both, but lately it's been a lot of nonfiction. One of my I did a lot of teaching during the pandemic, and one of my students is an economist, and we want to do like a writing project about market failures in the music industry. So we've been doing a lot of like econ research about it. So that's like been the stuff I've been
market
doing.
fails within the music industry. Man, why don't I just send you my bank statement? I think that'll talk about it all right there.
Yeah. I mean we could go, that's like a whole can of worms to get into. But
I'm interested. I'm interested in this though. So let's not get all the way into the can. Yeah. But let's go like a little bit into the can.
Sure.
So what aspects within the music business, the record sales, what musicians are doing, the DIY approach, like the music business is abroad.
Yeah. So what we're sort of looking into is mostly about sort of like monopolistic control of copyrights that allow different companies to have disproportionate access over digital service providers.
Yeah.
and that how that sort of creates how the streaming economy incentivizes the sort of like collecting of song copyrights as an asset, as opposed to encouraging the people with musical capital to recycle it into making new stuff. There's actually a great article in the Atlantic that touches on some of this stuff, called "Is Old Music Killing New Music?" about how most of the money in the music industry is spent on like old song catalogs. And there's like this whole thing.
Is this kind of like, could this be, as an example, would that be Spotify just buying the rights from labels?
Spotify doesn't really buy the rights from labels. It's more like labels buying the rights to things. And actually, there are a lot of private equity firms that like see valuable song catalogs as like a good store of value. Okay, so
that would be like, it wasn't that long ago that Bob Dylan sold his whole thing
to
Apple.
Yeah. And you know, we all have friends in the music industry and friends who are signed and stuff, and like we all kind of know that like recording advances compared to what they once were are sort of like non-existent anymore.
Right.
And, you know, I think a lot of it, too, kind of has to do with the way recording technology has changed. And there are a lot of positives to that where it's like I can make, you know, I know enough people that like I can make a record fairly cheaply at high quality. But it also means that the major record labels like don't really feel like they need to put people up in a recording studio and have high wages for the people that and I think if you look at, you know, we need to do like a real study about this, and I don't want to say too much before we like finish our research, just because like
but it's fascinating because I think people that are the privy to the disconnect here, and what's, you know, the disconnect between the artist or performer versus the majors capitalizing, especially through streaming. We don't know to the level of it that you do. So even hitting this kind of surface level thing about it is still fascinating, because like we're like, maybe I'll click on some clickbait and like, oh, Neil Young's pissed off, okay, you know, and move on. But I don't spend time really digging into it. It sounds like you have.
It's been really fascinating to check out. I mean, it's interesting. Like, you know, I think where we're starting to land as we do more of this stuff is, on some level, this is sort of like an intellectual property rights issue. Like the thing that gives like the three major record labels so much disproportionate control over what things not get made, because you don't need them to make anything anymore, but you kind of need them if you want to have a big enough audience to have a music career a lot of the time, you know?
Sure.
The sort of like perfectly competitive market on the internet, everyone can find their own audience, is like somewhat of a myth. Like there's certain avenues where that's true, but if you talk about the things that actually like give people careers or support economies of people like us who like train their whole lives to like be sort of like music assassins on other people's music, like that stuff is like totally falling apart. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the economics of streaming don't incentivize production of new music in the same way that record sales did. And as a result of that, you don't see these companies recycling their surplus capital in the production of new music.
Meaning something like remasters or compilation records?
No, recycling their capital is in like spending the profits that they receive to like invest
new artists.
In new artists.
Yeah, for sure.
To me, what it seems like they do is they wait for something to be popular enough so they can add to their portfolio.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't do the kind of thing that people did back in the day where they would sink, you know, large amounts of money into artists and kind of create a whole economy around it. And the terms of what they would get if you were successful were totally brutal and vicious. So it's not like I'm not trying to be nostalgic about the good old days or anything like that. But I think like if you're going to look at the influence of technology on the music economy, there are a lot of double-edged swords. Like everyone has the freedom to produce their own content, but if you don't get in bed with some kind of monopoly, it's very unlikely that anyone will see it, and they're not going to give you very much money to figure out how to make it happen. So
No, I think
take it all out of labor costs and stuff like that.
I was just talking about this actually, and then I do think that there is an association, and it's all part of it clearly with what you're speaking to, and also like all the television shows, these competitive television shows. I've had some friends that have toured with American Idol. Yeah, it's American Idol people early on. And like they would tell me that Idol takes a 360 deal on the person's whole career.
Yeah.
So like now, I don't know for sure, but I think that would go as far as like, let's say Kelly Clarkson right now, they're getting a cut of her TV show.
Yeah, probably.
You know what I mean? And so like a record company, then she's famous because she's been on TV for whatever and has all these people in all over the country, maybe world, supporting her. It's like, okay, yeah, now we'll give you a deal.
Yeah.
So it's all, they don't take risks anymore.
No, well, and it makes sense if you think about it, because like the thing that makes streaming profitable for record labels is not any one album or any one artist.
No, right.
It's the aggregate portfolio of what the intellectual property they can control.
Sure.
I mean, like I remember reading a thing like the 3 major record labels make $1 million an hour from Spotify.
Wow.
And
so now how do they get paid out? Do they get a portion of each subscriber or a portion of the ads, or like what's their payout?
Well, if you sign a record deal, right? So you're going to give up control of your master recording. Like I think I need to look at my notes, and this is where it's like I don't take some of this with a grain of salt because I have a lot of the numbers written down. I'm just not looking at it. I remember reading somewhere, and some of these are estimates because there are a lot of non-competitive business practices in the music industry where people are forced to sign NDAs so they can't discuss wages, which has happened to me before. And so it's like some of it it's hard to get people to talk about stuff in detail sometimes for that reason. But I remember reading an article that estimated that the amount of streaming royalties that major record labels take from artists typically varies between 50 and 80%.
Okay.
So that's where it's coming from. You know? And that's usually on the master side, and a lot of the time publishing side too, because they own their own publishing companies.
Right.
And it's and to sort of like countenance that against like, oh, okay, well, what are artists doing? The figure I remember reading is that the top 15,000 artists on Spotify, which is like a tiny, tiny fraction of a single percentage point of the artists that are on there, make $50,000 in gross business revenue. Okay. I think before their splits with like whatever companies they've had to sign to get to that point. Okay. And before taxes. So it's like, if you're kind of like one of those people, like that's not a lot of money to run a business. No. If you're in a 4-person band and you have to share 20% of that with a manager, that's, you can't survive. No one can survive on that. You know? Obviously this includes people like Drake who are doing just fine, but that's sort of like the difference. Like in the recording industry days, like, it's like an artist, like you only have access to your own copyrights, right? Like if you're a record label, if you have enough money, you can have access to everyone's copyrights. Right. Which is sort of why we're kind of circling in on this, like, this is an intellectual property issue. Because the original purpose of copyright was to give artists and creative people a financial incentive to produce more stuff. Okay. Which is like the opposite of how our intellectual property rights work now. If anything, it's acting as a disincentive to invest capital into new music and new art. Right. So those are the sort of things we're sort of thinking about. I don't think, we're still kind of at the beginning stages of this. Oh, but to just wrap up this point, one of the reasons you don't see this sort of recycling of capital anymore is back in the day, like in the 80s and 60s and 70s and 90s, up until Napster, the game theory of making money as a record label was like, all right, we're just going to bet on as many people as we can. And the biggest ones are going to carry the whole industry because they hit so big.
Right.
And then we will try to take everything we can from that person to finance all of our failures.
Right.
And the music industry, I mean, any artistic discipline, it's like the failure rate is it's in the high 90s. It's everyone fails.
Yeah.
That's just the way. There's actually a great book I read called, not a great name, but it's called Rockonomics.
Okay.
Alan Kruger, and it's all about the economics of the music industry, and it is fascinating.
From specifically the recording industry?
Yeah.
From
And
like the dawn of recorded music, or like does it
more
start
about the modern era.
Okay.
The modern era about how
going back to the 60s, or like picking up right now with the internet and technology?
It's mostly like a snapshot of right now, or
Okay.
5 years ago, because it was written like 5 years ago. But it's a great book, but there's a whole argument in it about this sort of like natural positive feedback loop of popularity, and how that creates like a sort of like winner take all economy for the arts in general. And I think the way technology works is sort of accelerating that to some degree.
Sure. Sure. So now what is this, knowing all this, and all the other, what does this, like knowing this, like I feel like any artist would want to like have this kind of call to arms, like let's do something about it, let's go storm the castle.
That's why we want to that's why we've been looking into this, is to sort of,
does it make you want to start a record company, or does it make you want to get involved with the music business on a certain level?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason like
the business of music. I mean, you're in the music business as a musician,
no, of course. But like that, but I'm on the like labor side mostly.
Right. Yeah. We're at the lowest of the totem pole. Like the creators are the lowest of the.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I think the reason we've been looking into this stuff, and why we want to kind of do a writing project about this is to like, I think a lot of musicians can't see the big picture of what's happening to them. Mm-hmm. They have an idea that something isn't right in the music industry anymore, and something has changed. Like, especially if you're like on the labor side of it.
Yeah.
And you just hear stories sometimes of people touring with big artists for like no money. And
oh my gosh! Like what I hear about,
they're broke. Like
they come back from like major gigs, and then they're stopping into your local, be like, "Yo, man, you need a drummer," or whatever. They're just gigs over now. Time to go get something else.
And your odds of landing one of those gigs is so small. It's like, and that's not the way it used to be, and people know that. So like, I think people have like this deep seated feeling that like something about the music industry isn't working for people who are in it. Mm-hmm. For artists too, but especially for people in the labor economy.
Yeah.
And I think if you don't have some like broad economic language to like look at the big picture, you don't really know what you're looking at. You just feel something's wrong. So I think we're trying to figure out a way to like do that. And so aside from what I've said now, I probably won't go into much more detail about. So just because like
sure.
we're still at the very beginning of this, I don't want to like
throw out some ideas that
ends up not being right, or that like when we do more research we
find out other
information. How it is. Like
it's
like one of those things. Yeah, I don't want to spread information. There's misinformation. Yeah. There's like enough.
There's enough. There's way too much of that already. Yeah, but that's fascinating. Have you always been plugged into economics?
Not really. I mean, this sort of all started just because I met my friend Thomas during the pandemic.
Okay. And so this is a relatively new interest.
Yeah.
Economics,
Yeah, I like, at least in this way. And I mean, I've been shedding a little bit just so I have a rough idea of what's going on. I'm still like a bass player. There's a lot of stuff I don't know. I'm probably like a white belt. But my buddy who I'm working on this with has had a bunch of stuff cited, and is like a real dude.
Okay.
We're a cool pair because like, again, we're still at the very beginning of this, but he has like the economic language. Like we were talking about the music industry because I was giving him bass lessons.
Okay.
Well, this is kind of what I think. And he actually had like the background to be able to kind of zoom out at the big picture and be like, oh, well, it sounds like this is kind of what's going on. And there's just certain information you can't get if you're not in the music industry.
Right, of course.
If there's I wouldn't say criticism, but if there's any caveat about that Alan Kruger book I recommended, I would have it's that there's certain things he can't there's certain information he can't get because he's not in it.
Right.
And it really is firewalled off for people on the outside of it.
Yeah,
mostly because people won't talk about their wages, primarily. And for either reasons of like kind of like predatory non-disclosure agreements, or simply because I think a lot of people are embarrassed to admit what they'll actually accept for work, you know? I've definitely noticed.
Oh, I thought while you were discussing that, I was thinking like what the top dogs were making, and what I was thinking is like they don't want us to know how corrupt it is because they're making so much money.
Yeah, but I mean, even among like musicians and stuff.
Oh yeah,
I find like a real reluctance to publicly talk about working conditions.
Yeah.
Like I feel like there's like a sort of like tacit shame about a lot of that kind of stuff in a way that really is only, it is to our detriment.
There's some dudes I know that are on major tours, and it's part of the gig where nobody knows what anybody else on the gig makes.
Yeah, I've had that happen to me too. But
it creates this very isolated and insulated culture.
Yeah.
Like even among the band.
Yeah.
And so then if you're not even telling like the cats you're on stage with, if you're not even talking about the bread at that level, you're not going to get off stage or come back into town from a tour and talk about it because you can't leak this because you don't want to lose the gig.
Yeah.
Man,
I've had so many weird things happen to me in the pop world. Like, it's one of the reasons I kind of stopped. Well, one of the other reasons I don't do it much is like there aren't a lot of bass gigs right now. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is like a laptop and a guitar and drums and mostly a laptop, and it's like, well, like I love pop music, like popular music. Like I love songs and stuff like that. Like, I'm by no means like a jazz snob of any kind, but it doesn't seem like there's like a lot of stuff out there that my skill set is good for right now.
Right.
And, I remember, I won't say who the artist is, but I was doing a pop tour, and 2 days before the tour started, I got a call from the manager to tell me that I had been fired and was being replaced by my own bass tracks. Never got paid for it.
You never got paid for it?
No.
You never got paid for the session?
They used a recording of a live show, so I got paid for.
Oh man, that's dirty.
Really fucked up. And dirty. At the time, I was like 24 at the time. I didn't have the like, kind of like, I'm 31 now, and I've been through some stuff. So like, I didn't have the kind of grit to be like, okay, well, you better pay me for the session then.
Yeah, right. You didn't know you had to stand up for yourself.
I didn't know, and I assumed that they were going to call me back after this tour, which they did not. So
okay,
and I had a number of issues with them about them like paying us incorrectly and paying us in ways where we couldn't see what we were getting paid for. So I had to track it. And it's just like at every level, they paid us the wrong per diem for no.
What do you think was going on there? Like in the back of your mind, what do you think was going on? Some kind of weird money laundering tour?
No,
or like they had some weird investors or something?
I think it's just the where power is right now and hiring for that stuff is so on the side of whoever has the capital to fund people because wages have been pushed down so far.
Yeah.
That if people want to complain, they'll just find someone else who won't. And
absolutely.
It's not like back in the day where like there's no tracks, and if you don't have Nathan East on your gig, it's not going to sound good. You know what I mean? It's not like that anymore. Most of the show is a laptop. So like if you just want to, if someone complains about their conditions, you can just find someone else, and it's not going to change the product in any way.
Right.
I think from the audience perspective, like, you do lose that kind of like, we're all on stage making this moment happen together. And there's some pop artists who don't do that. I mean, like I've heard a lot. I have friends who work with some big artists who seem lovely and they treat their bands well.
Sure.
And the gig's fun, and like a lot of it is still really live. So it's not. I don't want to paint a picture that like every pop show is like this. It's not true. But a lot of them are, and it's. At the time, if I just thought that stuff was normal, when I was younger. Now, being a little older and having friends that are older than me who were around when it was different, it's like you can kind of see the trend and why it's hard for people in the labor economy to like stand up for themselves in those situations. You know?
Yeah, it's because I mean it's rough, man, because like you want to keep the gig, but at the same time, like you're aware that you're probably being underpaid for the gig or taking advantage of in some way. It's like, well, if they're just gonna stop calling me, well, like, damn, do I want to keep working in these conditions that are, you know, not respectful, or and have something, or just like have nothing, you know? So you know, basically musicians just bend over because it's a gig, and and everybody capitalizes off of that. And the worst for me is when I see musicians who I used to play with then become like bookers or contractors or whatever, and now they're on the other side of the desk and they're doing that shit to musicians. I'm like, oh man, that is messed up, dude. That is messed up. Like, I understand what you're doing. You're trying to just make money from the scene. Cool, I'm aware. But like, you're the guy we all complained about together. Now you're the guy. Like,
you know, that's where it's interesting too. Like, I feel like, at least in the things that I've read, a lot of the books that I've read that talk about the music industry, they tend to view musicians as like a single group of people.
Yeah.
That's a great example. It's like, it's not true. Like, the interests of like the recording artist you're playing with and our interests as like the labor part of the music industry are totally different.
Right.
And they have sort of, and I think we're sort of being exploited in different ways. But I've seen that happen a million times, you know.
Yeah.
When like you're playing with an artist and they're sort of small, and then they get a little bigger, and then they start to view you as being separate from them.
Right.
Whereas like I've definitely been in situations where I felt the like, hey, we're all down for let's be all down for the cause and it'll pay off later.
Yeah.
It's largely been a tactic that's been weaponized against me to accept bad conditions.
I think it's typically weaponized. It's a way to, you know, kind of create followers within this cult, you know, and then then the cult can get away with all the destructive things it wants to get away with because the cult leader has the power that goes to their head.
Yeah, I think too, it's just like a really good way to get people to accept lower wages.
Yeah.
And because it doesn't affect you do it again. I don't know. I haven't done real research, so asterisk this, but it does seem like to me that the gigs that really need the people in the band to make the thing have way better conditions than the ones that don't, because they're track dependent. And that stuff is way less common on those other gigs.
Yeah.
My opinion. Like the kind of like basic sort of like, oh, we're just not going to pay you for this day because you were traveling, and like tough shit if you don't like it, which totally has happened to me, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Or just like all of your paychecks are off by $5 for no reason. Or like the per diem is $10 less than we said it was going to be while you're out on the road. Like stuff like that, you know? I feel like that stuff is less common when there's a little bit of a more equitable balance between like the artist needing the band and the band.
Right, because right.
And in that sense, I do kind of view us sort of as like, we're like the self-driving car thing has already happened to us.
Yeah. Right.
And it's interesting. Like, there's a lot in there about like, can you use like 20th century labor organizing tactics to deal with this? Like, I don't know. I don't think so.
What do you think? Like, just to spitball ideas or shoot from the hip in a completely idealistic scenario.
Yeah.
What do you think would be the response to this that's in favor to the working force? You know, grunt labor, gig players.
My intuition right now, I think that like, you know, if you look at like where at least among new artists, like who has funding to generate this kind of economy that we're in, right? That we're very lucky to be a part of. I mean, we get to play music all day. It's the best.
Yeah. And then we're in Los Angeles, and there's just it's full of amazing musicians that are inspiring and all wonderful. That. Yeah. But that doesn't pay bills. You know, like that doesn't pay my rent.
Yeah. It's not an excuse for exploitation. But
absolutely.
My intuition is that at the moment, the things that get enough capital to sort of like finance that ecosystem where you can actually tour and make and have like something that generates profits to be able to employ people like us is the money is no longer going to really come from record labels to be able to do that unless they know it's a sure bet, you know? And one of the first things that can go is our wages. And I think I think we need other kinds of institutions to fund things like this. We sort of had an imperfect kind of recycling mechanism for profits that went back into the music industry in the 20th century with record sales. And you can express that mathematically because there's like a marginal cost to recordings. I'll let Thomas explain that. I'm not. But, they actually had to invest in the stuff that they were making.
Right.
And that's, you know, and in a way that they no longer do.
Right.
Especially mostly for people like us. And I just don't think that given the technology we have, they're going to do it. And I think you get kind of like, you know, from, you know, if you're a consumer of music, like the stuff that becomes popular tends to become narrower and narrower and narrower, and you lose out on being able to experience a lot of great music that is being made, but people are very unlikely to hear because there's no capital for it in distribution.
Right.
So you have dead weight loss there. And then I think for us, like, you'd have to have some kind of funding body that isn't funded through streaming in the same way. Like, I don't know what that is. Like, that's probably what we're going to start thinking about. But
so would this be something similar to like corporate sponsors?
No, I mean, I think probably I mean, all I'll say is in places that I've been where there's a lot of state-sponsored funding for things of the arts, it seems like it's a lot better.
Okay.
I don't think that the music market is going to fund the creation of new music really anymore.
No.
It seems like much more interested in buying and selling old song catalogs like copyright hedge funds. And consumers... You know, I mean, you really should check out that Atlantic article I was telling you about.
Yeah.
Apparently, most of the listening that happens on streaming is for old music also, which is not the way it used to be during the days of the recording industry. And we need some kind of funding mechanism for
new music.
For new music. And, you know, what that is, I don't know. But I don't think it's going to be the market controlled by record labels.
And then do you also think with a new funding source that will create a recycled... basically this new funding source will replace the old music label, so it'll still recycle. Let's say whatever, you have a source that funds your record, goes platinum, whatever, generates a shit ton of money that goes back into the company. Do you think it would then, the company would have the integrity to put that back into music, or just use you and capitalize you and
I don't
just
think
for like, okay, we made money off of him, now we're gonna just dump it back into advertising.
I think
get a Super Bowl commercial.
I don't think it's going to be a private company that does it. I think with technology the way that it is, you can't really have a market for music in the way that we're used to.
I agree with that.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be some different sort of thing. What that thing is, I don't know. But the way the music industry is now will not allow people who make it really to survive if it continues in the direction that it's going. So at some point that'll have to change.
On the topic of economics, I agree with all that. On the topic of economics, I was talking with a friend of mine a few months ago, and we were talking about the stock market and stuff. And he was explaining to me what he was up to that way. And he's like, man, that's the only way a musician can really survive. It's like you have to be...
Off investments?
Yeah. He's like, that's the only thing. Like, however someone were to get a little bit of a chunk, you know, whatever. Maybe you just go play some bullshit tour you don't want to for 6 months. Just start with like a nugget to begin with. Then you like work doesn't make money. Money makes money. So like the only way to really survive as a musician is to get into the economical game like that through investments and things.
Yeah. Sorry.
Are you in? Do you do that? Are you having like a personal portfolio with investments?
Yeah. And I had a gig that was very regular. It was the only one I've ever had in my career that's been like that.
Okay.
I was able to save enough money to like buy a place before it got in LA, and that in and of itself, like
the equity of real estate.
Yeah, it's been a big thing. But it there's what's happening in the music industry is like very similar to what's happening to a lot of other parts of the economy.
I was going to bring that up. I don't think it's specific to the music business. I think it's a global marketplace.
The music industry, like any arts industry, is super volatile.
Yeah.
Because of how few people get to a place of any kind of stability, just because of how brutal it is. And so it's a great microcosm to see certain kinds of effects, like of, sort of oligopoly and automation. Like you can see it in really clear ways because the music industry is so extreme.
Right.
And I think that's a big part of the reason why my friend Thomas is interested in some of this stuff. Aside being a big music fan.
Right.
There's a lot of there's something to be gained by looking at the microcosm of the music economy in context with everything else. But yeah, I mean, there's a book sort of reminds me a little bit of this book by this guy named Thomas Piketty called Capital, which I haven't read all of. I only read the beginning of it, which apparently is very common with that book. But
okay, is it a difficult read?
Yeah, it's really long.
Yeah, okay.
But there's a thing in it where he talks about how like the current economy is represented by like I think it's like R is greater than G, where the rate of return on capital is greater than the actual growth in GDP and output in the economy. And that totally makes sense. Like most of the people I know who are doing okay in the music industry, like they did some version of that.
Yeah.
We're in weird time. And COVID, I think like too, just I got inspired to do all of this because like the live stuff had sustained all of us enough to like kind of just keep going and not have to think about this. And then when that just didn't exist anymore, it felt like the rug got pulled out from everybody.
I agree.
You could really see how bad it was,
I agree. And it was kind of, no, we didn't see how, but it also kept us distracted from creating. And to circle back to something we talked about earlier in the conversation, there's a lot of new music coming out post-pandemic and stuff, is because we also realized before the pandemic and the shutdown that we weren't creating. We were just in this cycle of like, all right, got another gig, let's go do the gig. And the thing that was good about the lockdown for the arts, I think, is it gave us all a second to reassess.
Yeah.
Like, what am I doing? Okay, like, cool, yeah, I was playing a lot, that's great, but that's not really, just going all over the place to play all the time. I'm not creating anything. Like, I really want to be creating. Let me kind of reassess and now get some things lined up to start investing in that. And the time off was a nice time of recalibration and perspective. I hope for a lot of musicians. It was for me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there was definitely the impending sense of doom at all.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Which has not really gone away. It's gotten a little better, but
you also,
it's not like our world is not falling apart still.
Right. And now you also realize how quick it could all stop again.
Yeah.
Like it can stop that quick. Like it's all just one day away from like the whole calendar being wiped open. Yeah.
But that being said, I got so much stuff done.
That's great.
Creatively. Like it was a very creatively fertile period for me. And I went through this whole tangent of getting interested in the economics of music in a way that like never would have happened.
Right.
And honestly, since I have been so busy gigging and doing sessions again, I've had no time to do research. And so Thomas is still doing some, but I know that like once some of this music is out there, I'm going to probably have to take like a break from playing and like really focus on this. Cause I think it's like an important project and we're still like at the very, very beginning of it. So I'm sure I'll learn like a ton more as we keep doing it. And who knows, maybe if we talk again in 2 years, I'll be like, oh, everything I said the first time is totally wrong.
Yeah.
I think like that direction of like control of intellectual property and sort of like the collapse of the musical labor market and that whole thing is like kind of where we're looking into. So it's been really depressing. Like I can't think about that stuff and make music at the same time. I just have to completely disassociate everything I read about the music industry.
Yeah, because otherwise it's just in the back of your mind, like, why the hell am I doing anything?
It's just poison. Yeah. Just ruins it. But it's also been super fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's good to be aware of what you're investing your time into. You
Yeah.
know, like even though it could get super dark, but you're aware of where you're putting your time and effort, at least when it comes to commerce. Artistically, that's another thing. And those are two different brains, the commerce side and the creative side.
Yeah, dude, like I played like fucking modern jazz. Like my artistic path is not determined by the market.
Right.
I would not, honestly, if I wanted to make money in the music industry, I wouldn't play an instrument.
No.
You know?
No, I'd be a songwriter.
Yeah.
For whatever that's worth, but if there's more to it than that.
You gotta be sample guy.
Yeah.
Although
right.
I definitely know a lot of stories of friends of mine who have had crazy weird stuff happen to them on hit songs and stuff like that too. But
about getting screwed or just something taken off?
Just something like they get a credit and maybe they did all the work and then they get no points on the song. And
right, of course. Of course.
That kind of shenanigan. Yeah. I mean, that's been in the music industry forever.
That part's probably never going anywhere. To wrap up, this is a question I like to ask guests semi-regularly. What is a gig story of where just some kind of gig you were on, session, whatever, maybe while you were teaching, anything from your career, where just like really took a left turn and it's just like, what the hell happened?
Oh, man. Okay, hold on. Let me think about that. I remember it was one of the first gigs. It was when I really first started to like gig out for other people. I was 18 or 19. I just finished my freshman year at USC. And I did my friend asked me to do a gig where we played smooth jazz arrangements of famous Disney songs for like a Disney corporate event. And they did not pay us. And at the time, I didn't know what was going on. You know, they should have paid us a lot of money to do that.
Disney, yeah. So they specifically asked for this?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay, I thought this was just something you guys thought would be fun.
No, they pretty much asked for it. I mean, it was my friend is into smooth jazz stuff anyway, who did band together. And again, we were 18, so I didn't like really know when to ask for money. I was just trying to play.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, it's like, what the fuck? They're Disney. Like they should.
Oh my God.
They didn't pay us,
dude. Man, I got stories about Disney. Like my old roommate used to tour with the Disney artist, and I remember when he got paid for like New Year's Eve. You know, it's in Vegas, I think, at this big, huge Disney thing. I'm like, what, dude? Really? Yeah. Like, I wouldn't even take something local for that.
Yeah,
it's pathetic.
But anyway, that's the premise. That's not the weird part.
Okay.
So we started playing. I forget what song it was, but we played this song, and during the thing, they had, I think we played From Zero to Hero from Hercules, but smooth jazz. And during that song, they had all of these like Pirates of the Caribbean pirates and a Johnny Depp impersonator like come out on stage and start dancing.
Yes.
And all this like weird crap. And I remember just looking at this happening and being like, we probably should be being paid for this, right? And I'm playing smooth jazz.
I should definitely be compensated for.
Yeah.
Right.
And I remember playing like these smooth jazz arrangements of Disney songs and just being like, where am I right now? What is this? Like, I feel like I made my own David Lynch movie, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, what's going on? Like, I can't do stuff like this again. I can't have my career music be this. Like,
right.
You know,
isn't it funny when you're young?
I actually had a great time because all the people who was in the band were really good and they were all really good friends of mine.
Yeah.
So I actually look back on it fondly.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, that was weird.
But a choreographed smooth jazz under the sea.
Yeah.
That's
maybe that's what we were playing. Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, in retrospect, as an adult, thinking about that, it's just like, I can't. Yeah, that actually happened. I can't believe that was like an event in my life.
It's so funny when you're young, man, and like you do all these gigs and like you just take something. There's always this pending fear of like, oh, this is going to be the rest of my life.
Yeah.
You're man, oh my gosh, I can't do that gig because I don't want to be that to be the rest of my life. You think every gig is going to be the rest of your life.
Totally. And, you know, I feel like we've definitely gone down like the dark side of the music industry for the most part today.
Yeah.
But that being said, like, all that being said, I've had some of the most like amazing transformative experiences on stage. I've gotten to do stuff that like I never would have thought I would have been able to do as like a teenager, you know, like, man, I remember me and Michael and a bunch of our friends, like We did a Playboy Jazz Festival hit together, and I got to play at the Hollywood Bowl and like take bass solos and play modern
that's sick.
jazz at the Hollywood
Yeah.
Bowl. I never thought that would ever happen. You know, like,
Right.
that was one of the most like beautiful moments ever. And I was there with like a ton of my friends, just playing music that really mattered to all of us with people like.
Yeah. I had a great venue in
So
a
well,
fucking
and,
huge
like,
city. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the Rolling Stones there when I was a kid. You know, I grew up
Oh,
here,
sick.
so like I
Yeah.
always wanted to play there. And I think that was like my second concert, and that was like a big like, all right,
Dude,
this,
the closest
this is pretty fucking
the
cool.
closest I got to the Stones is I was in London last month. And like obviously I had to go check out Abbey Road, right? So we go to Abbey Road. Whatever, catch the train or the bus back, whatever we did. And we're at Hyde Park in like London, huge park. You been there? Do you know Hyde
Yeah.
Park? Yeah, okay. It's massive.
Yeah, I was just in London a few weeks ago.
Oh, okay. So get off from the subway, come upstairs, and everybody's like, Stones, Stones, Stones. And like the Stones were playing in Hyde Park. I'm like, oh my gosh,
That's amazing.
this is just London as hell. Like just left Abbey Road and then walk into a Stones concert at Hyde Park. It was the best. It was the best. Dude, thanks so much for doing this, man.
Dude, of course. Thanks for asking me, man.
All right. See what I mean? Nick is really informed about the business aspect of the music industry. That's something I've been interested in for quite a while. I used to think I had to, quote unquote, be the best bass player ever, and then things will just kind of magically work out. And not sit behind the desk and not be on the business side or not get too deep within the business thing. The older I get, I think I've began to understand that there is a difference between the art and the commerce or the industry. I still practice, obviously, to perform at a very high level. But since this is my job, I had to dig into the business side too. I really appreciate Nick sharing so much and look forward to hearing more from his research about it because it's something we're all living in, and learning better ways to navigate it and gaining more information about it is always helpful. So thank you so much, Nick, for doing the research and sharing it. Folks, hit subscribe wherever you are listening to the Bass Shed podcast and click on the little rating system. I'm going to be biased. I'm going to suggest the 5-star. I'm going to suggest the 5-star rating. Leave a friendly comment. And as always, thank you all for listening. That's about all I got, folks. I will catch you on the next one in a minute.